Welcome to Williamsport City Council meeting. It's June 6, 2019. Please rise for an invocation by Councilman Joel Henderson, followed by the pledge.
Dear Father in heaven, we are grateful to you for all that you've done for us, for placing us here in this city, and for all the benefits that we enjoy for that. And Lord, we praise you as the creator and the supplier of our needs. We thank you for our city and for our strong communities here. And we thank you for raising up strong men and women as leaders in this community who seek to guide and to protect and to lead our community. And even now, as we mourn the loss of John Mano, we're grateful to you for bringing him to this city. And we thank you for his selfless acts and his overflowing compassion, which even now drives us to look beyond our faults and our past mistakes, which tend to drive us apart from each other. And Lord, it helps us to reach out to one another in love as brothers and sisters in this great human family. And Lord, we now desire to recognize, just as he taught, that truly the only lasting salvation to our society will come when our hearts are changed by the Holy Christ, our Savior. And so, by his grace, we ask again tonight for unity, for wisdom and truth, that we might with integrity make right decisions for this city. And we humbly ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Henderson, for your invocation, and in particular for recognizing the contributions that Father Mano made to our community over many years. I want to take the opportunity, because I know a couple other people had indicated that they'd like to take a moment to recognize his contributions and his passing this week. So deviate for a second from the agenda to open up opportunities for anyone who would like to say something about Father Mano. Ms. Mealy.
I was fortunate both as a child and then as an adult when I purchased a house to live in the same neighborhood as the one in which Father Mano pastored at Annunciation Church, and he did remarkable things for both the city and for the very specific community in which I grew up. His passion and his devotion to both his job as his work as a priest, his life work as a priest, but also to the community that he ministered in was really striking. And I have spent a lot of time this week, especially because I lived within a block of his funeral services, so I sort of witnessed everything. Spent a lot of time thinking about what a wonderful man he was and how lucky we were to benefit from his efforts in our community for so long. And then at the same time, what a huge loss it will be to our community, a man who's worked so hard to build community for so long. And I hope that many of us can step up to take the reins and to try and lead the community in the direction that Father Mano was working toward. But he will definitively be missed, and he did wonderful things while he was with us.
I have an elder cousin who was also a priest, and in the early stages of his involvement with the church, I also became, I was introduced to Father Mano through him, and had a number of opportunities to discuss things with him and get some of his insight, which was deep and broad, and his very sort of kind-hearted and open-minded way of addressing pretty much any subject matter that was brought up to him. Very good at keeping people on an even keel and not letting our emotions run away with ourselves and such. very good at those kinds of elements regarding his practice and his personal life as well. And just a sad scenario that it happened kind of suddenly, which kind of took a number of us by surprise, I think. And but as was already mentioned, I think the city owes him a debt of gratitude that would be extremely difficult to repay. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to have known him to some extent and to have his support and his guidance on occasion. And I think I'm in line with a great many other people in this community as well. And as was already mentioned, he's going to be sadly missed. And I just want to make that known. Thank you.
Other comments? Ms.
No,
Scott?
Father Manafort, to go back to when he was in the seminary, a lot of people were shocked. My husband and him were in the seminary together. And I know Liz looked at me and said, really? This was really before I met my husband. I wanted to make that perfectly clear, okay? And it was interesting when we moved here and meeting Father Mano, because I used to write to him when he was in the seminary. After I found out it was Monsignor McGough, and there's a whole group that are here that were in the seminary together. And what people don't realize, I think, at times is the great sense of humor Father Mano had. I mean, there was this dry sense of wit, and he also kept track of where everybody was. I think that was what was so amazing. We changed parishes, and it was amazing. He called up and he wanted to know what the problem was, why we weren't going to his church anymore. And it was like, what happened? And he kept track that we weren't there at Mass for a couple of weeks until I explained we were in another church. But he's going to be sadly missed because he was just a joy. I mean, his smile was infectious. It really was. And he did care. He was such a loving, caring person. And it's his soul that we will miss, but we know he's up there watching down on us.
Mr. Anderson?
I would just add on there, I think his example and life, and even over this last week now, has given testimony to the fact that he affected a lot of people and was greatly respected. And I feel it necessary just to point out that sometimes we look at important political figures or whatever else and think, boy, if change is really going to happen, that's where it's going to happen. But the reality is, it's people that care, people that just care, and they are able to affect others as he did. And I think it's important for us to recognize that and allow his example to inspire us and elevate us to do better in our own lives and not just leave it up to somebody else to try to fix things, but just to be that example that we know he was and that we ought to be as well. And so we appreciate that example and let it drive us to do better ourselves.
I had that same thought, that we've lost over the past couple of years, some people who had great impact in our community on a personal level and being involved with things. And none of them were politicians in the way they interacted. It was just in everyday life and activities and institutions that touched and helped a lot of people. I think the shadow that Father Mano cast was pretty widespread, beyond the city even. Everybody knew him because of how he got involved. But for me, looking at him as a priest, he modeled what the Word of God says, that you can, I'm paraphrasing, you can say you love God, but the way you show it is how you love other people. And if you have the love of God, you will necessarily interact with people and help them and have compassion and help to make lives better. And that's what he did. And I think that's why he had such an effect on people, because he truly did care, and he manifested that love that his faith put in his heart. And people know when it's genuine and not just manipulative or just a surface kind of thing. He truly cared. And in what Councilwoman Mealy said about it's for us to pick up that mantle. I was talking to somebody at the viewing the other day, and about the big hole he's going to leave. And I said, as an individual, yes, but it's on us and the people who were touched to pick that up. And that's actually a principle in the Bible, that God doesn't work in addition. He talked about multiplication. It's not 1 and 1 equal 2. It's 1 and 1, 2 together, multiply. And that was in God's word in creation, but it was a principle. And Jesus himself said, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, there won't be any fruit. There has to be buried, but out of that comes life, and more life than that one was. And I really think to honor Father Mano, there should be many walking in what he did and inspired to do things, maybe not as widespread, but if you have 100 people giving of themselves and helping and loving their neighbors, maybe the people on their own block, and getting to know them, that's when you change a community. And as Councilman Henderson said, it's not from a panel like this. We can do things in a limited way to really facilitate structural things and stuff like that, services, but on a human basis, when you touch somebody, because really what are people looking for today? We live in a hard world, and there's a lot of need and a lot of hurt and a lot of pain, and it's really going to be compassion that makes life better for people, and that's what he modeled. And I think we should be inspired that, well, we're losing that now, but we shouldn't lose it. It should really multiply, and that's what I look and what I would pray for from his life.
Thank you. I personally grew up in a largely Protestant community, and so when I came to Williamsport, I can remember being particularly intimidated by this growing interaction that I had with priests and nuns, and I can remember the first time I met Father Mano was we would go to our neighbor's house here in Williamsport on a regular basis to enjoy their pool and their company and sometimes their beverages. One day we were there and we were told, oh, Father Mano's coming over, and I felt a new sense of tension, like I need to put my Sunday clothes on and put away my beverage and all of that kind of stuff. And very quickly and immediately, his demeanor, his presence, his off-duty personality that I think reflected who he was, on duty and off duty, put me and my family and the whole get-together at ease, and it was a very positive interaction. And I didn't necessarily get to know him well on an individual basis, mainly for the lack of opportunity. Many of you, I guess, have nicknames. I never got a nickname. But one of the things then I took away from that was the desire and the opportunity to learn from his example and see the role that he played in the community, inside the church less, but beyond the church more. And the thing that I noticed in person was something that I noticed from afar, looking at his interaction with all of the members of the community. He was inclusive, he was welcoming, and he didn't judge. And that was part of what drew people into his circle, I think, and helped to then have everyone's guard go down in the way that we often have our guard up in interacting with others, and then provided the opportunity for him to have an impact on solving the problems of our community, and for others to be receptive of the impacts of everyone around them, because he could put people at ease, and through the model that he projected. And everywhere he went, the best I could tell, he made everyone else better through that model. And so, without repeating everything that's been said, I think our best celebration of his legacy is to continue to find ways to make everyone around us better through replicating the example he set for us. And as was said at his funeral, for those of us that were there, I think the model that he was trying to replicate was the model set by Jesus. And so, as far as I know, he did a really, really good job at that. If we fall short but can do a really good job at replicating the model he set, then I think we will all be better off, and the problems our community faces will continue to be a little bit easier to resolve, thanks to all of what he's taught us over the many decades that he's been a part of this community. So thank you for all in attendance for indulging us. I think we had some discussion about whether or not a formal process of recognition was appropriate, or a more informal, personal, and reflective one would be. And for those that I spoke to amongst my colleagues, this seemed most appropriate and most sort of in line with what he would have appreciated. So thank you for your patience as we went through our comments. And may he rest in peace. No easy way to do a transition, so let me just move on to the next item on our agenda, which is approval of City Council meeting minutes dated May 23rd, 2019. Is there a motion and a second to approve those minutes?
So move.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, any comments or questions? Hearing none, Mr. White.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Noviello,
Yes.
Mr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Dr. Williamson.
Yes, and those minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is limited courtesy of the floor. We've had no requests for that this evening, so we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a resolution certifying a local match. Mr. White?
A resolution by municipality certifying provision of local match for state operating financial assistance.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
Second.
Thank you for a motion and a second. Mr. Nichols, how are you this evening?
Fine, thank you. Good evening. And this particular resolution, actually the first two resolutions before your companion documents is required by PennDOT for inclusion in our state operating financial assistance grant application for the next fiscal year, which is 2020, starting July 1 of this year. As determined by Formula in Act 89, Section 1513, River Valley Transit will receive $4,348,063 in operating funds by requiring a local share of $405,908. This resolution certifies that the required local match will be in place and secured. The following resolution certifies to the source of the local funds, and as we do every year, This local share needs to be provided by the end of the fiscal year. For simplicity, as we've done before, the city will provide the local share with our transit partners reimbursing the city for their respective share. Finance Committee did see this information and reviewed it, and I'll defer back to the chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mealy, Finance?
Okay, Finance did review this item and forwarded it to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. As Mr. Nichols says so well himself, this is a standard resolution. And,
First two are standard resolutions.
Yes.
I forgot the word standard. I don't know how, but
So that means the remaining are substandard, or,
well, no,
okay. Ms. Mealy?
they're somewhat standard. How's that?
Mr. Nichols, you'll excuse me, I was looking at something while you were speaking just now, but I don't know if Mr. Nichols mentioned that this, the amount of our funding this year did not increase for this particular dispensation from the state. That's related to some litigation at the state level about the turnpike and the truckers. It's strange, yeah. But anyway, the state is being cautious about handing out funds because they're not quite certain what will happen with this litigation and whether or not the same amount of money will remain in this line item. Consequently, we could have expected to see the amount increase by as much as $300,000, but it stayed flat this year. The good news is we did take in some unexpected grant money elsewhere in this evening's agenda, so hopefully at least there's a way to even it out a little bit. That said, our match did increase because the match will continue to increase annually until we get to the 15% of the allocated amount number. For this year's allocation, that would be about $645,000, so we can all be happy that we're still not there. And, but it is $405,000, and we have a new partnership in the Muncie Green that enables us to meet that match without increasing anyone's specific contribution to the match amount. The city's contribution, I believe, annually is $210,000, Mr. Nichols?
$210,000. And, that amount is budgeted in the city's annual budget, and that hasn't increased for over 20 years. So we try to continue to get new partners. Right now, we're up to 18 different local partners now, which is, just years ago, it was about 8. So by doing that, we've been able to keep the local share for the original partners the same. So, like we want to continue to do that, and so like I said, it's budgeted for $210,000 in the city's budget.
And that's all I believe I have to say. I'll defer to the other members of the committee if there's anything else.
All right, thank you. Other comments or questions from members of council? Mr. Henderson?
I probably asked this last year as well, but can you just trace for me how it works? I guess the other partners reimburse River Valley.
The city bills.
Oh, okay, the city bills the other part.
Well, no, I'm sorry. River Valley does, no, the city does. We bill the partners, and then the city bills RET for that amount.
Okay. I just wondered how that flow works.
Yeah, we bill semi-annually in May and November to the partners. As I said, there's 18 of them, and then the city bills us for that amount, and we reimburse the city, for that particular amount. Right now, it's so the city again is $210,000, which has been for many years. So the difference between 210 and 405 comes from other partners.
Right. Okay. Yeah, just wanted to review that a little bit. And so then when we're looking at the budget in December, we'll be able to see that coming in from RVT
Right.
As income. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Hearing none. Mr. White?
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Dr. Williamson.
Yes, and the resolution is approved. Next item on the agenda is a resolution by municipality certifying provision of local match. Mr. White?
Resolution certifying the local match for state operating financial assistance.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
So move.
Hearing a motion and a second. Mr. Nichols?
Again, it shows that the city is guaranteeing the local match, and for simplicity, as I said, we simply indicate that the local match will be provided by the city, but in actual, the actual situation is that we bill the partners to reimburse the city for, again, the difference between $210,000 and $405,000. Just for interest, I did have a list. Right now it says 19 with the city: Williamsport South, Williamsport, Loyal, Selectman, Toursville, Lake Cumming, Du Bois Town, Williamsport Home, Muncie, Lake Cumming Mall, Lake Cumming Crossings, Montgomery, Hughesville, Jersey Shore, UPMC, Penn College, Lake Cumming College, Waste Markets, Muncie Green, and Lake Cumming County. So those are the partners that make up the difference.
Thank you. Ms. Mealy, anything further to add? All right. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Mr. White?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the resolution is approved. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing execution of a grant agreement with DEP. Mr. White?
A resolution authorizing the City of Williamsport on behalf of River Valley Transit to execute a grant agreement with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Commonwealth Financing Authority for a multimodal transportation fund grant.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. Mr. Nichols?
So this resolution authorizes the appropriate city officials to execute a grant agreement with the Commonwealth's Department of Environmental Protection for what is called an Alternative Fuels Incentive Grant, or AFIG, in the amount of $300,000. This is the third AFIG grant that we've received from DEP, with previous grants supporting our public CNG fueling station, as well as the purchase of CNG buses. Believe it or not, it was 7 years ago the Larson Design Group and RVT and other community stakeholders created a focus group to look at ways to benefit from our natural gas resources in central Pennsylvania, including economic development opportunities and other long-term benefits. So as a result, RVT completed a CNG fueling feasibility study in order to understand just what the investment would be, the payback of fueling its fleet with CNG, as well as other stakeholders such as the county, city, and municipal vehicles with CNG. At the very beginning of this 7-year process, DEP Office of Energy and Technology Deployment was a key partner in our move to convert its fleet to compressed natural gas, with the approval of the first AFIG grant, which assisted in the development of our CNG fueling station. Now, 7 years later, we have 19 CNG buses, all of which have been made possible through PennDOT, DEP, and FTA assistance. This AFIG grant, again, relates to the upgrade from a CNG transit vehicle instead of the standard diesel bus, and so that's approximately $30,000 is the difference for that particular upgrade. This grant is part of the next resolution for the proposed award of 4 CNG buses, again, which is the next resolution. I handed out a press release tonight just for your information from DEP when the grants were announced, and we were surprised to see that RVT received $300,000 out of the $367,500 that was awarded. So kudos to my staff, especially Kevin Kilpatrick, who's been sort of liaison between us and DEP, and they, even the secretary came up here at one point when we received one of the grants. So we have a really good relationship with DEP, and we certainly are grateful for their assistance in this project.
Thank you. Ms. Mealy?
This was reviewed by Finance and forwarded to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. Obviously, this might help somewhat to make up the operating budget hole left by a shortfall in allocation in other state grants this year. But the way that it works is that basically $30,000 for each of 10 new buses is that is to say, $30,000 of the purchase price of each of 10 new buses is covered by this grant, which will leave us $30,000 from the purchase of each of these 10 new buses to allocate elsewhere from the state grants that we're receiving for those purchases, whether it's to additional spare parts, whether it's whatever the parameters of the grant are, that, you know, whatever it will allow us, whatever it will allow us to be, whatever it will allow it to be spent on. So of course, we benefit not merely from upgrading our fleet to currently, I believe, we'll be at 23 CNG buses after this year, after the purchase of the 4.
Yeah, after the four, that would mean we were up to 23, and the goal was 27. So, with 23, we're like 90%. So, we're almost there. And again, every time we add CNG buses to the fleet, the savings are incredible because essentially we're paying per gallon equivalent less than $1 in CNG, and if the diesel is over $2, and so we've cut our cost essentially in half.
So clearly, the positive effects throughout the system that will benefit from being able to upgrade to CNG on our purchases, but also then from the fact that having received funds elsewhere, perhaps to make these purchases, we'll be able to utilize those in other capacities. As I said, finance forwarded to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Thank you. Comments or questions from members of council? Hearing none. Mr. White?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and that resolution is approved. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing award of a contract for 4. I believe there's a typo if I'm looking at the latest version.
I think the agenda said
3, but it's 4,
It's
correct?
4.
And I'm
The
sure
resolution is correct.
the title that Mr. White will read probably reflects that.
A resolution authorizing the City of Williamsport to award a contract for the purchase of 4 compressed natural gas low-floor transit vehicles.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
So move.
Hearing a motion and a second. Mr. Nichols?
Yes, again, this resolution authorizes RVT to enter into a contract with Gillig for the purchase of 4 compressed natural gas transit buses and related spare components in the amount of $2,550,000. As Councilwoman Mealy indicated, this will bring the total number of CNG buses purchased by RVT to 23 and almost completes our conversion of its fleet to this type of clean fuel. Previously, the Federal Transit Administration announced that RVT would receive a $2,040,000 million grant through their FTA Clean Fuels Grant Program, again, to fund the purchase of these 4 CNG transit buses. The balance of the contract with Gillig will come from a PennDOT and an AFIG grant from DEP. Again, this project, again, provides tremendous savings as it relates to our fuel consumption and benefits many of our fueling partners as well. So, and once again, this is a joint procurement, state procurement with another Pennsylvania transit system, well, actually several transit system, and which expedites delivery as well as provides for a low acquisition cost. And this was reviewed by the Finance Committee, and we're asking your approval of the resolution.
Thank you. Ms. Mealy?
Okay, this was reviewed by finance and forwarded to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. I only really have a handful of notes on this. As Mr. Nichols said, the grant is for actually more than the purchase price of the buses, and that's related to being able to purchase spare parts with the additional funds, which will be helpful. We did discuss with the diesel buses that are gradually moving out of service as we move forward. Unfortunately, many of the parts are not interchangeable with the CNG buses. There's not much to be done about that. Every once in a while you change style and you simply accept that, but it is an interesting note. And then we also discussed briefly the nature of the CoStar's contract, or the contract that we purchased these buses under, which is that this is actually a joint contract with Lancaster, and often, as we've seen, the city benefits from contracts opened by larger, or negotiations opened by larger municipalities, or the state that we can piggyback on and get a better price for our products. So that has been a small savings to us in this case.
Thank you. Other comments, questions from members of council? Bill, a quick question. Before CNG buses became a possibility, you had begun, I think, transitioning from the traditional diesel to a diesel hybrid. Would this mean that all of the I know you said 23 out of the 27. Are the other 4 now remaining only going to be the diesel hybrid, which did realize some savings versus the traditional bus that had been in place before that, or do you know?
Yeah, no, that's correct. We, before we started the CNG program, we purchased 6 hybrid buses. And obviously there were savings, not as much as the CNG program, but when we were able to get funding for the last 4, then the hybrids would be replaced.
So the only thing then will be on the road after these come in, will come in, are the CNGs with a few of the hybrids.
Right, correct.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other comments or questions, Mr. White, on the resolution.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the resolution is approved. Next item on the agenda is a resolution for a multimodal fund grant. Mr. White.
A resolution for multimodal transportation fund grant from the Commonwealth Financing Authority.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve this resolution?
Second.
Hear a motion and a second. Mr. Nichols?
This resolution is to authorize the appropriate city officials to execute a grant agreement with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in particular their Commonwealth Financing Authority, which is part of DCED. And this is a multimodal transportation grant, and it's as part of the East 3rd Street Gateway project. The application for, and this was discussed at the Finance Committee, the application was approved by Council last August, and the grant award provides for $621,416 for multimodal transportation improvements on 4th Street between Franklin and Penn Street. Based on the recommendations by Finance Committee, I provide you with a modified resolution to improve the wording to clearly indicate that the city intends to execute the grant agreement. As we review that resolution, the first resolution was a little fuzzy. You know, it didn't really clearly say we're improving the execution of the grant, so I appreciate the recommendation. And I also provided the proposed budget estimate and site plan, which was submitted as part of the grant application. Again, this is one block essentially between Franklin and Penn, and you know, the cost considerations were discussed to see, you know, just what all is involved with the project and what the backup that gives you an indication of just where the costs are allocated. So we hope that this project can be expedited so that the hope is to have it completed by the end of next year.
Thank you. And this was also reviewed by Finance.
This was reviewed by Finance, and it was forwarded with a positive recommendation pending some revisions to the resolution. Finance was under the impression that we were applying for the grant and was a little confused by the attached contract and, you know, in reviewing it prior to the meeting. So, so this helped the new resolution helps to clarify exactly what the purpose of the documentation we've been given is. And it is good news. We'll be able, as we've done elsewhere in the CBD in particular, we'll be able to extend streetscape a little further in the neighborhood surrounding the east, well, in the neighborhood which makes up part of the East 3rd Street Gateway area, by the good graces of the Commonwealth Financing Authority. And we did discuss a little bit that it is $621,000 for streetscape for a block, which gives you a little bit of pause. And, but that said, it is state taxpayers' money, not exclusively Williamsport taxpayers' money, which I suppose is worth something. The one thing I would ask Mr. Nichols, given that I'm now looking at the budget, which I didn't have on Tuesday, is the budget that I'm looking at says that the total cost is $920,000. The grant is for $620,000.
Well, if you go back to your binder, there's that spreadsheet which shows that the match to that is being provided from the county allocation to the city for the project.
Okay.
think I have the spreadsheet here. The original spreadsheet estimated, again, this was just an estimated time that this was done earlier this year, that the project would be $920,734 with $299,000 in match funds coming from Lycoming County. So we're not even into the design phase right now. My hope is that it comes well under, you know,
I think that
the
would be
grant,
everyone's
so
hope,
that
Mr.
we
Nichols.
can extend streetscape further than Franklin on 4th Street. And that's my hope. And they're very, you know, they're very flexible in terms of, you know, what the final scope of work is. And so as we get through that, I'd like to see, you know, that this part of the project can be extended further west on 4th Street. So that was just a rough estimate that we had to provide as part of the grant application. So, you know, there's a lot of work that we need to be done to finalize just what the actual scope of work is. So, you know, any input council has on that, you know, we'd like to stretch the funds as much as we can.
The only other question I have about the particular budget that we see outlined is the decorative pipe bollards. I think are the only thing
Again,
I
yeah,
see on here that
that-
I've never seen on another one of our projects in terms of streetscape.
You know, that part of the project, and Chris Kaiser is the one that, you know, proposed that element of the project. You know, we got to dig deeper into whether that's, you know, actually
I mean, my
a
concern
good
would
part of
be
the project. So, you know, that's, because right there's, you know, there's no sidewalk, there's no curbs or anything on the north side of 4th Street there.
Right.
So for safety reasons, for streetscape, you know, he came up with an idea of those ballards. So, but again, we got to go through the design phase to see if that really is the way to go.
I was
in
gonna
that
say,
particular-
it reads from the way that the wording on the memo as though it's they're being put in to benefit one specific business in that block. And my concern would be that I wouldn't like to see us engage in anything like that, especially with state funds. So I do think that we should look at that. You know, bollards to me would have been a great idea, say on Pine Street, where we seem to close the street. You know, when we close that section of Pine Street there pretty often, and it might have been helpful to have something that would have prevented the movement of traffic, you know, that we could easily put in place. I'm not as certain, I'd be more than willing to hear the rationale, but I'm not as certain that we have occasion to close that section to 4th Street all that often. And so it seems like that might not be an equitable use, I suppose, of funds that we've received.
No,
The rest of it, I haven't really looked at it all that well since we just received the documentation, but the rest of it all looks like things that we do in whatever neighborhood we do work in, and none of that, you know, and it's certainly a benefit to anyone who happens to have property on that block, but we do that anytime that we do work anywhere in the CBD and often elsewhere in the city, so that's not surprising.
Yeah, as we work through the scope of work, I think it would be appropriate to ask Chris to come before whatever committee you think is appropriate to discuss his ideas. You know, we want to make sure, you know, what we're doing is a benefit to, you know, all the stakeholders along that part of 4th Street. But, so, yeah, I'm not really clear what he had in mind with that, so.
Got it. Yeah,
you know, I think
there's
if
also
you-
like a yellow section of paving. Is that a different color paving, street paving?
I can't answer that, you know.
Okay. Because I know between the two items, if that's what it is, that's about $16,000.
Maybe Chris is trying to be a visionary for the future. I don't know.
Chris is a visionary. I just want to be certain that we're being fair in terms of
Yeah.
funding.
No, I'll have him come before. If you, I'd like to, I was asked him to come tonight, but he's away on vacation, so, you know, I'll work with you on, he can come to a council meeting or a committee, because I'd like to hear, you know, what
I mean,
his.
clearly, we're moving forward. I'm assuming Larson's doing the bidding and everything, or is Reynolds taking care of that? The RFP for the,
What's that, I'm
I
sorry?
said, I'm sorry, Mr. Nichols, I'm losing my voice. I said, clearly, is Larson or Reynolds taking care of the bidding for the project and the RFP?
Right now, the plan is to continue, you know, Larson's design group. You know, they have a contract with the college, and you know, they have an ongoing open-ended contract with the city, so, you know, I think, again, before we finalize any scope of work, I think it'd be great to have them come before. And I think part of the plan would be to, you know, interview the stakeholders, the owners of properties there, just to see what their ideas are, and, you know, there's no rush to get this out for bid, so we certainly want to do it the right way, so,
Sounds good.
you know, I'll talk to Chris, and I'll get back to you and see how you'd like to, you know, sit down and have like a work session on just what, you know, we have the standard design standards for our streetscape program. You know, we finalize certain things where, you know, trees and bricks and the curbing and all that kind of stuff. But I think we have an opportunity to do some unique things in that part of forestry. So I think it'd be great to sit down and just talk about it and see what his ideas are.
I will say that there looks like we're putting a lot of street trees in here, and that I think will make it a very nice addition to that section of Fourth Street. So it's great.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from members of council? Hearing none, Mr. White?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and the resolution is approved. Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is our certificate of appropriateness. Two of them. First one is for 100 Pine Street. Mr. Girardi, how are you this evening?
Good. Yourself?
Good.
Yes, what you have before you is a certificate of appropriateness request for 100 Pine Street. It's for a 16 by 20 shed to be on the above-mentioned property. Now, I did give you a picture of the shed, and the saying is, you know, it is what it is, it's not. This is completely different than what it looks like. But what you have is the size of the shed and the height and the roof, okay? The color of the roof is going to be a brown, and the walls are all going to be a beige, which match the existing building that's painted down there now, okay? There's only going to be one set of double doors in the front. It's going to be used for their lawn equipment, stuff to store outside and maintaining the property. So the windows and everything you see on the side will not be there. The only thing they'll have is a door on the one front so they can get in and out of.
All right. Is there a motion and a second to approve this certificate?
So,
Here, a motion and a second. Comments or questions? Ms. Mealy?
I just had my question answered. Sorry, I missed
Okay.
the sheet with the location.
There was one comment from the planning commission. They were thinking about wanting to relocate it. I did go down and look. The problem with relocating it between the dumpster and the building is that becomes a fire issue because it's a wood structure and I can't get it any closer than 10 feet to a structure. So that's why we can't put it there.
Thank you for the explanation. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Mr. White?
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Yes,
Mr.
again, I'm
Henderson.
Sorry.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, and that certificate is approved. Next item is a certificate of appropriateness for 358 Market Street. Mr. Girardi?
Yes, this is for two window signs. One will be located visible from Market Street, and the other one will be visible from Forest Street. It's the Masonic Temple. The signs are blue with white lettering. The blue does match the Masonic Temple's canopies they have out there, plus they do have some blue symbols up above in that building. And we also have the tenant here, if you have any questions of him or myself.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve the certificate?
So moved.
Second.
Here, a motion and a second. Comments or questions? Ms. Mealy?
I'm guessing I speak for at least several people on council when I say, what the heck is the Hatchet House?
I'll have the gentleman come up and explain that.
If you could,
Yeah, if you
state your
could,
name
please.
and affiliation for the record. And another way to ask Ms. Mealy's question is, we often take this opportunity as a little opportunity for you to advertise a new business.
Sure, sure. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
My name's Marshall Winters. I'm the owner of the Hatchet House, my wife and I, my family. And the name, I guess, could be a little upfront, but have you heard of axe throwing? Has everyone heard of axe throwing? So that's what we're trying to bring to Williamsport. It's sort of the newest entertainment craze that's sweeping the country. Picture darts on steroids. Safe, you know, we have individual bays to protect people. You throw one hatchet at a time instead of 3 darts. And my wife and I want to bring that to Williamsport and entertain everybody here. So our name is the Hatchet House. Our color scheme matches the building. We intentionally did that. We think it's tastefully done, and we hope you guys could come join us at some point.
Thank you very much.
Yep. And happy to answer any questions about the sport.
Do we get to pick who stands?
Everybody stands behind the line.
Oh, okay. Darn. Other comments or questions, Ms. Mealy?
No, thank you very much for your explanation. That actually was more or less what I'd figured, but it was a novel concept. I wasn't expecting that to turn up in Williamsport anytime soon. And that, it actually sounds very exciting. I may not see you there anytime soon because I have my only child is very small and probably not appropriate for hatchet throwing right now, but we'll see you at some point.
We appreciate that. Just so you know, we are one of the few that are going to be kid-friendly. Some are, some aren't. Our 11-year-old is probably one of the best in our family. He's incredible at it. So if you want to bring kids, you can. We just ask that they're able to safely throw a hatchet, and we'll, help to show them how and make sure that they can do it safely.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yep.
Sounds like a perfect place for a council retreat. Mr. Allison?
So if you've never thrown a hatchet competitively before, so how do you practice? Or
You come to us.
okay. So you
3
give
4
lessons
nights a
then,
week.
right?
Yeah. No, we will show you how to do it safely. There's generally 2 methods, one-handed or two-handed. Many of you probably have seen the video, if you've seen it at all, with the blonde lady who came in close contact with one that bounced back. There were a couple of things that went wrong with that video. She threw it at the ground first because her fingers were interlocked. So that's generally the first thing that you teach people when they're going to throw two-handed is don't interlock your fingers because you have trouble releasing. One of the first things they taught us when we've done it a bunch of times. And then the one-handed throw is much easier, but some people have trouble throwing one-handed. But yeah, if you want to practice, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of space here near Williamsport. You could practice in your backyard, but you could come practice with us.
Without hurting yourself.
Without hurting yourself. Without hurting yourself. But you could come practice with us too and have a lot of fun.
That's great.
Mrs.
Interesting,
Katz?
thanks.
What are your hours going to be?
So, little complicated. Generally, we expect it to be evening hours, but most likely Monday and Tuesday will be by reservation only or closed. A lot of these bookings are done online in advance. Wednesday and Thursday, 3:30 to 10. Friday, we want to stay open another hour, so 3:30 to 11. Saturday, noon to 11. Sunday, noon to 5. We want to be open a little longer during Little League, probably noon to 10, noon to 11 for all of Little League to support everybody that comes to Williamsport. We want to be here for them, so.
You're going to have hatchet throwing parties then?
We are. Safe hatchet throwing parties. Safe hatchet throwing parties.
It's interesting, really interesting.
Yep,
And
come-
welcome to the neighborhood.
Thank you so much.
I'm just thinking of the new circuit that you can now do. You can go across the street from where you are and paint something. When that doesn't go well, you come back across the street
You
and take
got
out
it.
your frustrations on
So
up.
wine and design, which is torture for me because I'm sort of a perfectionist, but my wife loves it.
Why-
Then you can
better
go do
throw the
yoga when you
hatchet
just-
first, then go to wine and design.
There
Good
you
call, very good call. Any other questions from members of council on their certificate? We're talking about their window signage,
Very attractive.
which are quite nice.
Thank you very much.
If there are no other comments or questions, Mr. White on the certificate, please.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Noviello,
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Dr. Williamson.
Yes, and the certificate is approved. Thank you, Mr. Drury.
Yep, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is except for filing, we have the ERC meeting minutes of March 5th and March 19th, 2019, and the Ad hoc Residency Committee meeting minutes of March 4th, 2019. Is there a motion and a second to approve those for filing?
So moved.
Second.
Here, a motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, Mr. White?
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Dr. Williamson.
Yes, and those are accepted. Next item is announcements. Immediately following the regular meeting here, we'll have an executive session for the purpose of litigation. The next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be held Thursday, June 20th at 7:30 here in council chambers. Other upcoming meetings include Monday, June 10th at noon, Planning Commission, and at 4 p.m. Recreation Commission. Tuesday, June 12th at 3:30 p.m. is the ERC. Tuesday, June 8th, wait, those both can't be Tuesday.
Thursday.
Okay, Thursday, June 18th?
No,
No,
no, wait.
Tuesday, June 18th. That must be
That should be Tuesday, June 11th, not the 12th.
Tuesday, June 11th
Yeah.
is ERC. Tuesday, June 18th at 10 a.m. is Blighted Property. 1 p.m. is Finance Committee. 2:30 p.m. is Public Works. 3:30 p.m. is Public Safety. And at 6:30 p.m. is HARB.
4:30 for the ad hoc, right?
And I'm sorry, there will also be an ad hoc meeting of
Full body of
the
city
full
council.
committee of the whole for the purpose of reviewing candidates for the Williamsport Municipal Water Authority at 4:30 p.m. Thank you for the reminder there. Thursday, then, June 20th at 10:30 a.m. is Zoning Hearing Board, and at 4 p.m. is the Board of Health. That brings us to the end of our agenda this evening. Are there any comments from members of council? Mr. Novio.
I just want to remind everybody that Saturday coming is the 10th annual Soapbox Derby race down Market Street. It's our decade-long anniversary year. We're very proud to announce the fact that we've been in the works for 10 years. I want to give a quick personal thanks to Mr. Jim Campbell. He's our race director, and on 3 separate occasions over these 10 years, he has won the Race Director of the Year award. Our city itself has also 3 times won the Racing City of the Year award as well. So we stand in pretty good standing with the organization overall. I want to thank all of our sponsors. We have over 60 sponsors for cars alone, all of which have been with us for the entire 10-year period. We're very proud of that fact and happy to have them on board with us, as well as our primary sponsors, which are the City of Williamsport, Kiwanis Club, Backyard Broadcasting, Penn College, and we're just grateful to have all these people together. I want to thank all of our colleagues for helping to do all the work to put this together every year. It takes us about 7 months to get 1 day's worth of activity ready to go, so there's an awful lot of work involved, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to thank everybody who's been involved and hope that we continue for another 10 years.
Thank you very much. Other comments? Mrs. Katz.
I think I could safely say that I can speak for everybody up here to congratulate and recognize all of our graduates that are graduating and wish them the best of luck on their new journey in life.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Hearing none. Any comments from the administration? Hearing none. Any comments from the general public? Thank you. And if you could take your turns, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and if you could. Absolutely, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this. Hello? Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. I believe you are familiar with my face. Karen Koch with the Center for Independent Living of North Central Pennsylvania here in Williamsport. And with me is my coworker, Mr. Gabriel Brown, also with the Center for Independent Living. We are here this evening to ask for some clarification as to what is the status of the accessibility plan for City Hall, what is the status of the elevator repairs. On March 26th, here at the Public Works meeting, it was indicated, I was told that day, that the bids had gone out, that they would have 30 days for the bids to be returned, and then after 2 weeks, they would be examined and a determination would be made. On that occasion, Gannett Fleming was here. They had the design. They were, I was under the impression that things were moving forward. Then at Public Works here about a month ago, we were told that with the changing in the administration coming up, with the mayor leaving, there were a lot of unknowns and that everything was going to be put on hold and that meetings for the public would be held at the Trade and Transit Center because of the accessible location there. And we thank you for that foresight. And then on May 29th, again, I was told by Councilwoman Katz that the bids had been sent out then. So I'm very, very confused. Were the bids sent out in March? Were the bids sent out in May? And could we find out what the status is? I've reached out to the mayor's office on several occasions in the past 2 weeks and received no response from him. So we would appreciate a better understanding of what is occurring with City Hall.
Sure thing. And let me just say that we generally don't make this session a question and answer, but I will ask that a member of council and maybe also member of the administration answer your questions offline at the close of the meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you, absolutely.
Mr. Brown, did you want to say anything?
No, we're good.
All right. Thank you very much. Please name and address for the record.
Good evening and thank you. My name is Scott Cawley. I live at 401 Woodland Avenue, which is in the East End, just north of the old Armory. And I'm here tonight to speak to council about the use and the increasing use of fire pits throughout the neighborhoods. So we've come out of winter. It's a pleasant time, spring. Summer will eventually get here and become very hot, warm, and then we'll move into fall. And throughout my neighborhood, throughout this spring, every night it's nice enough to be outside due to weather, or have your house open, it's almost impossible because I live in a campground now. On all sides of me, north, south, east, west, all of my neighbors now are using fire pits in their backyards. And that's kind of concerning to me from many aspects, from health, from safety, and just personal annoyance. The fact that I can't sit on my deck at night, on a clear night, and enjoy myself because I have smoke wafting all over the neighborhood. The safety issue, I woke up the other morning at 2:30 and my neighbor's fire pit was still burning. No neighbor in sight, but the fire's still going, smoldering. So it's kind of a personal annoyance, the reason I came down to speak to council tonight. I also remember, and I don't know what members of council were on council at the time, that we got rid of burn barrels, for many reasons. I mean, it was trash, which also, I'm retired now, so I'm home all day. Sometimes I smell fire at 10 o'clock in the morning, sometimes at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, mainly in the evening, mainly on weekends. But as we move into summer, some of my neighbors are at home, having outdoor fire pits or whatever. So it's a concern of mine. But also I'm starting to smell plastic. I mean, it has a distinct smell about it. Mm-hmm. So people are now taking the liberty to go, oh, nobody's really monitoring this. Nothing's really happening with this. And you just start to get this waft of plastic. And, where do we go from there? Again, a health concern. I have health issues that I try and keep in check, and this is something that just is annoying to me. So I just wanted to bring that to council's attention, and hopefully something can be addressed about it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments from the general public? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I can respond to the City Hall. I think provide an update if you desire.
Would it be, based on the way we usually handle these things, would it be better just to address directly? Or maybe?
That's up to council if you want.
In this particular issue, I would have no problem with it at all. I'm just trying to protect the tradition of doing it kind of outside the public comment time period. So I'm going to ask you to address.
Back to the future, and
yeah,
is there any questions?
In terms of
any comments from the administration?
Let's have, if you could address their concerns directly, and then maybe at the next meeting, you can give council a full update as well.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I have some very positive information. So.
Great, that's good to hear.
And I'll provide that to council in a memo.
Okay, thank you very much. Then can do I hear a motion to adjourn? Hear a motion in a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.